It's the Eagle Community Television Forum with your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi everyone, I'm Gary Shorman, and this is a forum on Eagle TV. You'll see something really unusual in the background, at least unusual for the Hayes Airport. In the background is a B-25 from World War II, and with me, to my right, your left, is Colonel Jim Swanke. And Jim, good to have you here at the field.
Well, thanks, Gary. We're happy to be invited.
Well, you know, in the background we have just a beautiful World War II aircraft. How did that aircraft end up coming to Hayes?
Well, we could start all the way back to 1944, and the plane was in Europe and flew many missions, and after the war was over, it stayed within service and eventually became a civilian plane, eventually the CAF, and we have an annual tour committee that goes out 1 year in advance or makes contacts a year in advance, and one of the contacts was both Garden City and Hayes. Our B-17 went to Garden City, and we're happy to be here with the B-25.
Well, it was fun watching you guys come in. You did a couple practice runs. You did a low pass over the field. One of the things about the older aircraft are the sounds of the engine and just the big engines. Tell me a little bit specific about the plane, the amount of power, and what this plane did in World War II.
Well, the plane is a low-level bomber. It's actually had dual roles. It carries only about a 3,000-pound bomb load, which by today's standards is pretty small. But typically it was used for strafing, shipping, railroad yards, military fields, but also well protected with its own machine guns when flying in formations against enemy aircraft. A very versatile, fast, it's a fun plane to be in. It's like driving a Corvette in the air.
Well, when you look at it, you see guns on the front, guns on the back, and all that. Did it fly in squadrons, or did a lot of the missions for this type of plane end up being individual missions?
Good questions. Virtually all in World War II were flying in squadrons. Typically, you're going to have anywhere from 40 to 100 planes going up at a time. And as time progressed, they realized they had to do that for self-protection so that enemy planes wouldn't come in from the sides on one plane and try and pick them off, just like when you get a crippled sheep and a coyote's looking for them. You want to keep them all together.
Anybody that's watched the movie Unbroken, you know, they talk about, and that was the B-24. We were talking about the difference. That was a much bigger aircraft. But the same war, the same sort of difficulty and challenges of fighting. And this airplane, as I understand, may or may not, history-wise, been shot at or at least hit.
Well, I'm sure it was shot at, because when you're bombing oil fields, typically the enemy is not real happy to have you there. So the plane is probably shot at. We don't have details, to the best of my knowledge, that it was ever damaged severely. More than likely it had holes in it, because over the years, aluminum's pretty light, and if you're anywhere near flak or gunfire, you're going to get some flak, but not necessarily enough to down the aircraft. They're pretty stable.
We hope to get some pictures from inside, at least take a look inside anyway, and when we do that, what will we see? I mean, what is inside the aircraft as far as both technology and gunnery?
You'll see a Spartan existence. This is not your luxury aircraft. It's the old military style metal frame seats with cushions on them. If you're short, you put another cushion under you. So in the front, you get the pilot, the co-pilot, and a crew chief is what we have today. Back in wartime, you'd also have the bombardier navigator. Mm-hmm. And when you go towards the back, where I usually am, you would have your waist gunners and your tail gunner. So it's very Spartan. You're going to see rib framing, and if people want to ride in our aircraft, one of the first things we tell them is, once you're off the ground, we'll let you walk around, take pictures, and look around, and even crawl like a gopher to the rear so you can get in the tail gunner's seat. But it's pretty Spartan, and you have to be careful what you're grabbing, because it's the old style cable controls. So if a passenger happens to accidentally grab the cable when there's a bump in the air, he's flying the plane, not the pilot, and that makes him rather angry. So we have to be cognizant of that.
One of the things that I know that people that are watching may want to know is, when you look at a plane that's this old, how do you keep it up? How do you find parts? How do you make sure that it's in flyable condition?
Good question. We're fortunate in Arizona. We have nice warm weather, when not so much Kansas, but I grew up in the Dakotas and Minnesota. Weather's not very nice, so we have those snowbirds, and a lot of skilled farmers, machinists, tool and die makers and so forth flood down to the land of the sun. And many of them will maybe live in smaller units, rental units and so forth. They need something to do in the day, so mom may say, Henry, go find something to do. A lot of them will come up and work on an aircraft. I mean, we have a lot of volunteers work 40, 50 hours a week on an aircraft for no pay, but they love it. They love the camaraderie. They love the history of the aircraft.
Well, when you see that aircraft in the background, it's just neat to see how well it's taken care of. You know, a lot of times you see these older aircraft and they're pretty beat up. Somebody's done some work on this. Is that all you?
No, the good news is they don't let me work in the aircraft other than wipe the oil off. That's one of my jobs. No, you've got to be a crew chief is responsible for the aircraft on the ground. And Roland Smith just told me a little while ago, it looks like we have static display, top of the wings are really dirty. And I said, okay, we'll get our crew out there and start working on it. But it's a labor of love. From the months of November through April, the plane is typically static or will fly on weekends. Most of our maintenance is done then because our tours start normally May 15th. We'll be gone until about October with our C-47, our B-17, and our B-25. So they better run while we're out here.
There's some artwork on the outside of the aircraft. Is that authentic? Or did you come up with your own artwork?
It's authentic. It's made in the shade. It's simply a model allegedly from Corsica. And of course, there's always stories about, you can look at the lady on one side and she looks something different about her. It's different color hair. And of course, you can imagine all kinds of stories that go with that. So since I'm on TV, I won't get into it.
On the side, there's actually some bomb markings that show bombs. And is that the true history of this plane?
Yes.
Has that been
Anytime
authentic?
you see the marking of a bomb, that is one mission where they went out to, whether it was doing oil fields, which was the primary role of this particular aircraft, or strafing a ship, any type of thing where you actually release the bombs for a target. If you happen to see, like your cameras here sitting on a tripod, that would indicate the plane is out on a photo reconnaissance mission, primarily, which is often done after a bombing run. Another plane will come in to see what the damage is and if they actually knocked out the target or whether they have to go back again.
Boy, that's interesting. They opened the bomb doors on this and you see what a big hole that is and you're thinking, boy, that has to be an experience to open those doors and let some bombs drop. So just amazing.
Lots of stories. I've actually, most of our stories come from actual veterans who flew these airplanes, the 17s, the 25s, the 24s, where one pilot who is now like 90, not the pilot, but the bombardier, 93 years old. So physically the bombs would not release. And he tried and tried. He had to actually walk out. There's a little canopy, a little track rather to walk on. He had to release the bombs by hand while the plane is flying. And keep in mind, these guys are younger than your cameraman. Old pilot was 25 years old. Most of the crew members are 18, 19, 20, 20 years old. Small in stature, brave in spirit and heart.
Boy, what's great stories that go on to not only defending what we do as a country, but really putting us where we are today. So that's neat. I know you're on there. I have a tour here. I want to take a quick break and come back in just a second, Jim, and talk about what you're doing, where you're going from Hayes, and what really the whole mission of this aircraft is at this point. Our guest is Colonel Jim Swanke. Back with more after this.
It's a beautiful day in our super high-speed internet great customer service neighborhood. Like you, this is where we live. In fact, our company is employee-owned, so it's our goal to improve the quality of life for everyone in our community by delivering faster, more reliable internet, clearer, more feature-laden phone service, quality TV channels, all with the level of customer service you'd expect from people who are your neighbors. Eagle Communications, our community connected.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the second half of our forum. What a cool day to be out on the tarmac here at Hayes Municipal Airport, where we have in the background a B-25 bomber from World War II, and our guest is Colonel Jim Swanke. And Colonel, you've been traveling around. You came out of Arizona today, but you're on, I call it the Legends Tour, but what is the full name of the tour and where do you go from here?
Well, it's the Flying Legends Tour, and the whole purpose of it is, which is somewhat symbolic of our commemorative Air Force anyway, is to restore, preserve, and continue these aircraft flying in honor of the memory of the people who actually built them, who flew them, and serviced them for many, many years. We actually came out of Albuquerque. We were at a show at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, and it was just a beautiful, we had maybe 75,000 people turn out over a two-day event. They had the B-1, B-2 bombers and the big C-5 Galaxies, and of course the crowd sees the old when I say the old birds, it's us as well as the planes. We're all kind of old birds, but it was great. And now we'll be here through next Monday morning, and then we head off for Greeley, Colorado is our next stop.
And is this a tour then that will go on all summer? And this kind of your summer mission?
Yes, every summer for about the last, I guess about our 7th year now, that we'll leave late April, early May from Mesa, Arizona, and then continue on. We spend a lot of time in Canada. The Canadians don't have anything like this. So we'll spend typically 4 to 6 weeks in Canada with our B-17 or 25 or both. And then we spend a lot of time in the Midwest. Maybe the next year we'll do the West Coast. Last year we did the East Coast. So we try to rotate about every 2 to 3 years traveling the entire nation.
We'll talk about how you pay for it, because this thing doesn't fly around. My guess is that takes, how much a gallon per hour?
Do you see my hand reaching for your billfold?
It's right over here. I wondered where my wallet went. What's it cost to fly per hour, and who pays for the upkeep and really the time and energy that goes into making sure this plane can fly?
We are self-supporting. We get no help from any government entity or any corporate, I shouldn't say no help from the government, which we don't, but there are some corporate sponsors now and then. Like Boeing is a great sponsor that will help do things for us. But otherwise, we're self-supporting. When we go out on tours like that, there's probably one of our biggest revenue makers. People say, it costs how much? I say, well, $395 per seat to ride in the back, $650 on the front. I say, well, that's a lot. And I said, watch how much fuel goes in there. 160 gallons an hour for the 2 engines. Each oil holds 37 gallons. So when we put oil in the plane, it's not by the quart. We bring a pump truck over and we put in 5 or 6 gallons of oil per engine when we do that. So typically around $2,000 an hour to fly it, base cost.
Boy, I can see why that happens, but it's so amazing to take a look at. And I'm appreciative, you mentioned volunteers that help keep it up.
Yes.
People that have and want to share the history of World War II, because it's so different from what we see today and
Indeed.
what goes on. And the history of the men and women who put themselves in these planes, took care of them, is pretty amazing when you look at inside and the structure and what they were flying in.
Indeed. Well, when you get inside and you think the plane is small, think in terms of World War II, the average person was about 5'5" to 5'6", weighed 140 pounds. You know, the fast food craze and so forth is maybe giving us all a little more girth. So it's a little harder to get into. Of course, we're a little bit older too, but you know, the good news when you get on an air base and see these young men and women that are so enthusiastic, they're in great shape, they've got great attitudes, they're flying the latest technology equipment. There's a lot of good things happening in our country yet too.
I love it, because you can also go online and find out about this plane. Give me the website and what you go to find out about the history and what you're doing next.
It would be www.azcaf.org, and one of the nice things about that video is, or that particular website, there is a video that was taken of the B-17 to B-25 flying through the Grand Canyon a couple years ago, orchestrated music. It'll bring tears to your eyes. It's that fabulous.
All right, we'll put that up on the screen here as well for people to be able to go to that website.
Yes.
Jim, thank you for bringing you and the team here and being a part of this. Hope you have a great week here in Hays, and as people are watching this, be able to go onto that website and follow this aircraft around the country as you travel.
Coming from the Midwest, I'm glad to see farmland again and not cactus.
It's green out here too.
Beautiful, love it.
Our guests have been Colonel Jim Swanke. Good to have you on the program. Good to have the B-25 in the background as well. Thanks for watching The Forum. It's brought to you by Hays Med and by Eagle Communications. Our community connected.
Hays Med is your first and best choice for healthcare. They're the only facility providing tertiary level services in this region. With more than 70 physicians and 26 specialties ranging from heart, orthopedic, spine care, cancer, obstetrics and gynecology, wound care, rehabilitation and surgery, including the Da Vinci robotic surgery, Hays Med is your comprehensive health provider for people throughout Western Kansas. Hays Med, helping people be healthy.